The Quagga turned his furry head at her mention of his name. Who? You, Ilishnish said. You're Zushiru, yes? Yes, who are you is my asking. Ilishnish furrowed her brow at his question. You know who I am, she said. Shiver. Shiver, shiver, shiver. Zushiru scratched his chin with a claw, then the fur over his shoulders ruffled. Oh, but you do not look like her. She is also dead. Old Man Tian turned her into crafting materials. Are you sure about that? Ilishnish crossed her arms. The Quagga nodded sagely. Zushiru was there. The dead do not return, unless they are adventurers. But dragons are not adventurers. Zushiru's wheezing laughter rose into the evening sky. What did he find so funny? Ilishnish's mind drifted back to why she was standing there. She looked down at the stall number, then at the details that Lady Wagner had written out for her. I'm looking for the merchant that's supposed to be here, she said. Instead, I found a Quagga. Do you know where they went? Such rudeness. Zushiru is the merchant here. She looked at the stalls to either side. Everyone else was a human or a dwarf. If you're a merchant, Ilishnish asked, shouldn't you be in the demi-human quarter? Lady Garnier says that we are all subjects of the sorceress kingdom, Zushiru answered, and we must learn to live in harmony with the others. Lady Wagner says that if I'm to be a merchant, I must be brave and seek new opportunities. I have employed some of my kin to work in the demi-human quarter for me. Here, I sell our goods to the humans, who are many and have great wealth. The jumpy little Quagga had apparently gone up in the world. Ilishnish leaned forward to look at his wares. Though they were sorted into cases, it was a familiar sight. Olisur Dark's hoard was filled with the tributes of his Quagga slaves, who offered him all manner of precious stones and metals. It wasn't a surprise to Ilishnish that they would put their skills to work here, but she wondered where they had found them. Perhaps they had burrowed deep into the earth to find hidden lodes. As she continued to savor the scents of the raw treasures, Zushiru poked his whiskered snout in front of her. Will you buy? Buy? Yes, Zushiru told her. Buy. This is merchandise, yes? I was just browsing. Zushiru leaned back on his stool, looking somewhat disappointed. Then I must ask you to move for the next customer, he said. But I must also thank you for bringing so many. I did? She sensed that people had gathered around the stall, but she wasn't sure why. Zushiru nodded. While you were appreciating the gemstones, they were appreciating your ear. Zushiru must think on how this may be used in the future. The heads of the people behind her snapped away. Ilishnish turned to glance at them. Why did they have to put on innocent looks? It wasn't as if they knew she was a dragon. Human propriety was one of the strangest things about them, a strange dance with all sorts of unnecessary and unspoken rules. Ilishnish stepped aside and slipped in behind the stall with Zushiru. What are you doing? He asked nervously. Lady Wagner sent me here. Ilishnish reached into her bag. Here's a letter from her. Hey, a man in a leather apron said. How are you for rubies? Zushiru turned away from the proffered letter to address him. Rubies? This is all we were able to find for today. Can't be helped, I guess. The man blew out a sigh. I'll take all of them. A scale was placed on the table, and Zushiru pulled a sack out from his cart. After weighing the sack, he poured the case of uncut rubies into it and weighed it again. A half-minute of bargaining ensued. When the exchange was finally agreed upon, half of the customers dispersed. They couldn't all have been here for low-quality rubies, Ilishnish remarked. This surprised me as well, Zushiru said as he swept the coins on the table into the now empty case. They say that the quality does not matter for the purpose intended. Those rubies aren't being used to make jewelry? Zushiru does not think so. At least 3 of the humans who have purchased them say that they are being sent south. If it was for jewelry, they should be cut here, no? His reasoning made sense. She wondered where the rubies were going and what they were being used for. After dealing with the rest of his customers, Zushiru turned to face Ilishnish again. Now, he said, why are you standing here with me again? Something about Lady Wagner. Ilishnish held out the letter again. The Quagga merchant took it into his claws, silently mouthing the content of the letter. What does this mean? You are not an apprentice, but, watching, helping, are you my minion now? No. She shot him a cold look. But it says, no. Zushiru scratched his head, reading over the letter again. You will watch and learn and help, yes? That's what I'm here for, Ilishnish replied. But I'm not your minion. Okay, this letter says that you will work, but I do not have to pay you. But only work you agreed to do? Yes, Ilishnish nodded. I'm a bard, I don't plan on becoming a merchant. Lady Wagner says that there are many things a bard can do to help you, so that's exactly what I'll do. The Quagga merchant looked around the plaza with a thoughtful look. Singing and dancing do not suit this place, he said. Maybe you can lean over the table Agei. Ilishnish lifted him by the scruff of his neck. She set him aside and went to stand in his place. If you want me to draw customers, she told him, I can do better than that. But they must be ones that will purchase our goods. Zushiru rubbed the back of his neck. She reviewed her memories, profiling the people that had registered to her senses since she entered the plaza. They were all dressed in annoyingly similar ways. Most had aprons and other equipment that spoke of vocations that posed hazards to exposed skin and hair. Appearance was secondary to how functional their outfits were. The most valuable items they held on their person were their tools. 9 out of 10 were male, which offered her distinct advantages. By bringing many, she suggested, won't at least a few make purchases? That was how the city plazas worked, in principle. By drawing people to a centralized location, many people offering a variety of products, services and entertainment could take advantage of the numbers. Drawing the awareness of thousands of people was easier than trying to isolate that single customer who would make a purchase. Zushiru thinks so as well, the Quagga nodded, but if you bring people in for nothing, I think they will get angry at us for taking up their time. This will work better when my company has more to offer, so I do not wish to test the patience of others right now. Your company? I thought you worked for Lady Wagner. Both Lady Wagner and Lady Gonye have helped Zushiru and the Zuigen clan a great deal. This arrangement is also one of their favors. By appearing to work for Lady Wagner, my company is sheltered from the predations of others. Why would 2 human nobles go out of their way to help a Quagga? Zushiru's nose wrinkled as he thought. In the end, however, he looked just as clueless as Ilishnish was. Lady Gonye and Lady Wagner have different reasons for doing this, I think. Though they are different, their actions lead to the same result. It is difficult to put in words. My mind cannot understand, but my heart can somehow feel that something important is happening. Perhaps it was because Quagga were far more social than humans, but Zushiru appeared to have picked up on the subtle changes going on in the Sorcerer's Kingdom. Did human leaders also have some special sense for it? Baroness Saradnik appeared to be molding the identity of her territory and its people by sheer force of will. Countess Wagner and Baroness Gonye were combining their talents to subtly influence the flows of culture and commerce. For that matter, Ilishnish's father, Olasur Dark, also sowed the seeds of change in his brood as a dragon lord. Without his influence, she wasn't sure how well she and the others would have adapted to their new life in the Sorcerer's Kingdom. Was it the will of the world that all this should happen? The more coincidences she came across, the less she thought there was such a thing as coincidence. How large is this company of yours, anyway? Ilishnish asked. For now it is not overly large, Zushiru replied. I have 5 clansmen that deal with those who bring stones and such to the demi-human porter from their lands. I am not yet confident that we can deal in more dangerous goods like wood. Later, I can show you what we do. The humans are only active for a few hours in the evening, so we will return to the demi-human porter soon. Ilishnish continued manning the stand. Though things picked up a little bit, it wasn't anything like the brisk business that merchants in the central plaza saw. A large part of the reason was that it was not the central plaza and thus did not see as many people. As she had observed earlier, the plaza that they were in was for merchants that specifically sold goods related to the nearby industries. The largely taciturn clientele came to the place knowing what they were looking for, and there was little shopping being done. Another reason was that the stand was very plain. This was common for lesser merchants in the city or those who were just starting to make their way, like Zushiru. There was the table, its stool, and the cart. The only other thing was some sort of tarp that was shading the stand. Humans did not naturally possess dark vision, so the poor lighting probably made for poor marketing. The lack of attention irked her as a bard. What is this tarp up here for? She asked. To block the magical lighting, Zushiro answered. I would like my wares to be more visible to these humans, but any more than this my eyes cannot stand. Lady Wagner said she would do something about it, but she has been busy as of late. I see. Lady Wagner says that if I'm to be a merchant, I must be brave and seek new opportunities. Normally an exclusively subterranean race, Quagga were subject to day blindness. Elishnish supposed any bright place would be a brave new frontier full of untapped markets for one who had only worked in the darkness of the demi-human quarter so far. How long have you been selling your wares in this plaza? 1 week? They said it would be a good step for me. The demi-human quarter is close by and the type of business done here is straightforward. That much was true, from what she had seen so far. She looked over the stand and the surroundings again, trying to figure out how to improve their visibility. In addition to the tarp, the location that Zushiro had chosen was also the furthest from any set of magical lights. It was the opposite of every other merchant, who competed for the places with the best lighting. If one considered that Zushiro was selling gemstones and precious metals, it was far worse. The lumber, stone and the ores that were being sold here did not shine and sparkle when flooded with light. Elishnish reached up to remove the tarp from above them. Zushiro dove under his cart with a squeak. What are you doing? Trying to improve the visibility of your stand, Elishnish replied. Since I'm here now, you don't need to sit out in the light. She wrapped the tarp around the table legs and ushered Zushiro into the nearly lightless space. Oh, this is nice. The surface is so cold and the wind makes it worse. I was thinking of buying a bigger one of these, like little buildings. Tents? Yes, tents. I wonder if I can afford one yet. The amounts that were being exchanged for Zushiro's goods were more than enough to buy a tent. He could easily upgrade his entire stall and have plenty to spare. Is there a reason why you haven't bought one yet? Do you owe tributor money to Lady Wagner? I have already paid her back for the table and the cart, Zushiro said. When I first met Lady Gonye and Lady Wagner, they showed me how to trade. We started with 6 copper coins and ended up with 20 silver coins in a few hours. 6 copper coins became 20 silver coins? What supreme sorcery was this? Out of curiosity, Elishnish asked. How much have you made since you started? Zushiro fished around in a satchel slung over his shoulder, producing a notebook. It felt like a lot back then. He flipped through the pages, but I was only making around 1 gold per day for the first month. Lady Gonye also sent me to learn how to read and write at the Azure Sky, Iron Fist sect. Miss Yuri is very scary and her attacks pierce my fur like it's not even there, so the learning was quick. She teaches for free, so I send my apprentices to study there too. The Quagga merchant shook his head, fur rippling as he appeared to reminisce over the pages. I do not know what has happened to me. Back then, I thought I would be content making enough for me and my sister's family. Then I started thinking about what I could do with the extra money, and it kept growing and growing. My clan was always small. When we were sent here we learned what it is to be poor. There are many mouths to feed and everyone has to work very hard just to survive. With my recent experiences, I know it does not need to be this way. Elishnish couldn't wrap her head around the way that he thought. Frost dragons rarely cared for even their children, and even then it was based on whether they were considered competition or not. Her relationship with Hejinma only existed because he was both harmless and useful. Their work continued for a few more hours. Elishnish would welcome customers and put on a pleasant front while Zushiro listened from under the table. Bards were possessed of a wealth of social skills, lore and the ability to detect and appraise. So much of what she did working the stand was a variation of what she usually did as a bard. There was no music, but her interactions were a performance of their own. The customers were a bit disconcerted when, instead of dealing with her, they found themselves bargaining with someone hidden under the table. It was an hour to midnight when they finally carted Zushiro's things back to the demi-human quarter. Well, it was more like she carted things back to the demi-human quarter. The Quagga hid in the cart, away from the street lamps. How did you get out there if you have to hide from the lights? Elishnish asked. I pushed my things to the southern gatehouse, Zushiro answered. Once I was there, I asked one of the Death Knights to help. You asked the undead for help? It is strange, yes? But Lady Gonye showed me that they would help people if what one requested was reasonable, so I did. Zushiro hopped out of the cart, brushing off his fur. Come, he said. There is still much work to do. This Zushiru will show you around. Master. 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 Ilishnish stood back with a furrow on her brow as several Quagoa swarmed Zushiru a block into the demi-human quarter. The Quagoa merchant smiled and bobbed his head as they sniffed him closely and patted his fur. Well, isn't he popular? How was your journey? One Quagoa asked. Did you bring anything from afar? Queried another. Did any frost dragons come for you? The last twitched his nose fearfully. Ilishnish snorted. What silly questions. Zushiru's journey was a 5-minute stroll to the quarter next door, yet they welcomed him like some hero returning from a legendary undertaking. While they chatted away, she slipped into a nearby alley, softly weaving an appearance she had not used in some time. She came back out, and the Quagoa's mouths all fell open. A wife. A wife. Master Shiru has brought home a beautiful wife. Zushiru stared at her, his mouth working silently like a stranded fish. Master, take us with you tomorrow to find beautiful wives as well. Ilishnish wordlessly shook her head and returned to the cart. Several of the Quagoa ran up to her. Oh, no, mistress. Let us push the cart. It is not right that you should sully your claws. Your fur is too magnificent to dirty. Have you seen a coat as fine as hers? Even Pei-Euro cannot compare. The Quagoa fell over themselves to ease her burdens, pushing the cart away. Zushiru stole furtive glances at her. What are you waiting for? Ilishnish asked. I should go now. Zushiru looked around. My mother always warned me of overly beautiful females. Now, where did the human go? That was me. Zushiru stared for a moment, then blew a laugh out through his nostrils. No, he chittered. Ugly bald humans do not turn into gorgeous Quagoa females. Never in my life have I seen a human do this. You've only been in the city for a single season. This is true, Zushiru admitted. But it does not change what I say. With an exasperated sigh, Ilishnish stuck a paw into her infinite haversack. She pulled out Zushiru's tattered letter and held it out before him. You sent this to me, she said. Your spelling is atrocious, by the way. This cannot be. Zushiru leaned forward as he squinted at the paper. I am not brave enough to write love letters. This is from last month. I still haven't figured out what this is. Lady Wagner told me that a merchant must be able to correspond with associates, Zushiru explained. She sat me down one day and had me write to someone I knew. I could not choose family or clansman and I was not confident in my skills, so I went with a safe option and sent my letter to the dead dragon. I did not know the postal service sent letters to Daray. Wait, do dragons go to Daray? Ilishnish was certain that dragons did not go to Daray, their souls rejoined the world upon leaving the mortal coil. She was also certain that Zushiru was an idiot. How could one be a successful merchant while being an idiot at the same time? He was lucky he had the protection of two nobles. You were going to show me around? Ilishnish prompted. Yes, but what do I call you? Are you Shiva? Dame Verilyn? Just pick something. I don't have the energy left to think. Zushiru scratched his chest in thought. In the end, thinking appeared to be too much for him, for he turned around and led her away. Ilishnish followed him down into the terraced bowl of the demi-human quarter to the entrance of the Quagoa warrens. You're not going to the market? Ilishnish asked. No, Zushiru answered, there is still much work to do. But merchants work in markets, yes? I thought this as well, Zushiru replied, and it was like that at first. But things became too big and I had to hire apprentices to keep up with everything. Now they work in the marketplace while I must manage the company most of the time. Then you're not doing merchant work now? I'm only here for that. Lady Gonnier and Lady Wagner say this is part of a merchant's work as well. They were very excited and proud when I told them I was too busy to do everything and started teaching me how to grow my business. This merchant thing only becomes more and more complex. One day they will find poor Zushiru's head melted like a vein of struck heatstone. She would pay to see that happen. It sounded mildly entertaining. Zushiru opened the portal to the warren, which was far larger than she remembered it. This tunnel is much larger than before. Ilishnish examined the reinforced walls. You said your people were poor, but materials for this were expensive in that plaza. They are, byproducts? Zushiru's mouth worked round the word, The tribes of the Great Forest of Tob deliver many stones, but ones bearing ore are rare. Gems are even rarer. Most are not considered suitable for masonry on the surface. Since the ground below Irantal is soft, I thought it would be better to use them for our home instead of trying to find a market for it. It was a good idea, I think. The tunnels descended in a wide spiral stretching beyond the range of Ilishnish's blind sense. At regular intervals, a side tunnel led into small complexes where Quagoa families lived. Zusharu stopped at one and went inside. It was a good thing that Ilishnish had become a Quagoa. The ceiling of the side tunnel was less than 2 meters high. "Sister." Zusharu called out, "Sister?" A brown-furred Quagoa popped her head out from around a corner, several ledgers in hand. "Welcome home, brother. One of your apprentices dropped off." Her eyes grew wide. "Wife?" "A wife. My Zusharu has finally found a wife." "She is not my wife, sister." Zusharu's sister frowned. "Then you should make her yours right away." She reached out and shook his shoulders. "You are a single male in possession of good fortune. It is only right that you should seek a wife. Everyone knows this." She furrowed her brow in thought, then gave Zusharu another shake. "This one will be the first. You should try and get at least 50 more." 50. Zusharu glanced over at Ilishnish. "Are you crazy?" Ilishnish said. "Are you crazy?" Zusharu's sister waddled up to her. "How can you refuse my Zusharu? Foolish female, he is the greatest merchant of the Quagoa. If you become his wife, you will have fresh milk and the best ores. Your children will grow up without want for anything." Zusharu's sister fluffed up her fur in affront, and she glared at Ilishnish with her beady eyes. Ilishnish wasn't sure how to turn her misguided aggression without revealing too much about herself. What sort of busybody sister would stick their snout into her brother's affairs, anyway? Zusharu grabbed the ledgers and took Ilishnish's claws in his. "Where are you going, brother? Your den is that way." After the door to the warren slammed shut behind them, Zusharu let go of her, releasing a long sigh. "Zusharu is sorry. My sister becomes excited like that. Getting a wife is all she ever talks about since I started doing this." "Then why not get a wife?" "I would like to go out and see the world first," he said. "Lady Garnier and Lady Wagner speak of many wondrous things. Maybe when I am traveling, I will meet a nice female. Perhaps from some exotic Quagoa nation far away." They continued to follow the main tunnel on its slow descent. Eventually, Ilishnish noted other demi-humans. "You're sharing your warren with other races?" "Ah, it is not so much a Quagoa warren anymore as it is the subterranean section of the demi-human quarter. We cannot expand outside the bounds of the quarter, but it is 200 meters to the bedrock here. Humans are such strange creatures." "Yes," Zusharu wheezed in amusement. "There is so much room to live, yet they choose to stay on the surface. They think the demi-human quarter is a small part of Irantal. They do not realize it is already twice the area of the city on the surface." They came across many different races, most of whom she was unfamiliar with. Some of them didn't even walk on the floor of the promenade, crawling along the walls and the ceiling. Undead patrols occasionally passed them by and the entrance to each side complex was guarded by a death knight. "Where did all these different people come from?" Ilishnish asked. "They are from the Great Forest of Tob," Zusharu answered. "I did not know there were so many peoples in the world, never mind the Sorceress Kingdom." Despite the great diversity, the mixing of many predators, prey and rival species, things appeared to be quite peaceful. This was most likely because they were all subjugated by the same overlord, but still. "What do they eat?" "Food is still imported from outside the city," Zusharu said, "but work is being done here as well. I will show you when we get there." After making another round, they walked past a suspiciously dwarven-looking archway. About a dozen dwarves were working to lay out pavement around it. Ilishnish sensed a familiar layout past the opening. "This is the Frosty Beard." "Yes, the third floor," Zusharu nodded. "They hired a company to expand the inn. I think those workers will be busy for a long time here. Everyone is trying to hire them for their own places." The air grew warmer and more humid as they went deeper. Traffic grew sparse after the 4th level and their surroundings became rough and unworked. Zusharu continued leading her forward until they reached the 6th level. Through the strong odors that permeated the air, Ilishnish detected a familiar, mouth-watering scent. "You're raising knockdown here?" Lady Yora caught several small herds from different parts of the mountains and brought them here, but it is only a part of it. Zushiru opened a side door and walked in. Beyond it, through a second door, was a wide cavern reminiscent of the underground spaces below the Azalisia Mountains. Luminous phosphorescence filled the scenery, creating patches of fluorescent color across the spectrum. A thin mist diffused the light, giving the place a dreamlike feel. Small groups of Nook roamed around the cavern floor, as well as the occasional tall myconid. On the ledge overlooking the cavern, Elishnish detected a small presence. Lord Mayor? Hello. The dark elf turned to regard them. His gaze went from Zushiru to Elishnish. You found a mate? Zushiru cast an abashed look at the cavern floor. Elishnish's fur rippled in irritation. No, my lord, she said. It's me, Shiva. Lord Mayor gave her a once-over, then raised his staff. True seeing. Oh, it is you. There was magic that could pierce her guise? Elishnish frowned at having missed the opportunity to open her senses to the spell. Lord Mayor, that spell, who can cast it? Both arcane and divine casters, Lord Mayor replied. It's out of reach for pretty much everyone in this region, though. Some beings also possess it naturally as an ability or sense. A lot of the sentries at home have it. Elishnish took refuge in the fact that it appeared to be extremely rare. The last thing she needed was having her guises seen through while she wandered around in strange places. She turned her attention to the scenery past the ledge again. Trickles of water coursed along the cavern floor, through the stony pillars that crisscrossed the space. The cavern curved out of sight, running parallel to the promenade outside. What is this place? It's a grotto, Lord Mayor told her. The bottom half of the area under the demi-human quarter is for agriculture. It hasn't really gotten going yet, so things are pretty bare right now. 4 levels are for cultivating mushrooms, moss and lichen. There are some herds of animals being raised here too. The bottom level is a lake for fish. So all this is to feed the upper levels? Why yeah. We froze migration until we figure out how many we can support with this. If we get it just right, it'll be a self-sustaining environment. I've always considered you an amazing druid, Lord Mayor, Elishnish said. I feel like the things you can do will never cease to amaze me. Lord Mayor looked down, picking at the cavern floor with the base of his staff. It wasn't just me, he said. A lot of people helped. The dwarves and the Quagoa planned and dug out the tunnels, and now they're making the upper areas look nice. Myconids are tending to the mushroom grotto, and lizardmen are raising the fish. The demi-human and heteromorph leaders are managing their tribes well. Everyone is doing their best. There are even humans. Humans? But humans live on the surface. The ones organizing things on the surface are also organizing things down here, Lord Mayor told her. Baroness Gonnier and Countess Wagner. They're even figuring out how to structure the economy so it can generate revenue for the Sorceress Kingdom. I see. Elishnish only understood the last part in very basic terms. However, it fell in line with a long list of other things that she had learned about the Sorceress Kingdom. Unless one was an adventurer, it seemed that strength and raw power did not matter at all when it came to how the nation measured its subjects. Submission to the order of the Sorcerer King and toiling to create wealth for the nation took precedence over everything else. As a dragon, who loved personal wealth and could naturally grow to become some of the mightiest beings in the world, Elishnish wasn't sure how to feel about that. Zushiru does not understand. You are not a merchant, yet you are better at appraising goods. Isn't it obvious? Elishnish replied, I'm a bard. Merchants aren't the only people who can appraise things, you know. When it came to discerning the material value of goods, all types of merchants, bards and rogues held roughly the same degree of proficiency. Vocations that revolved around the acquisition of value, whether they be nobles, mercenaries or reavers, also had the sense to a lesser extent. As a dragon bard, Elishnish wielded both her natural treasure sense and bardic appraisal skills. A Quagoa merchant would probably have the advantage over a human one when it came to appraising ores, metals and gemstones, but Zushiru was simply no match for her. This did not mean that Elishnish would never become confused over more subjectively based market values and shifting trends, but once she was accustomed to them it was next to impossible to deceive her. Zushiru's wife is so skilled. Zushiru's wife is so clever. Zushiru's children will be the greatest merchants in the world. Elishnish glowered at the Quagoa apprentices. Both she and Zushiro denied that they had such a relationship, but the other Quagga only egged them on. She was strong because her fur showed her to be a superior Quagga. If she had no interest, then why would she continue to stay close to Zushiro? Ilishnish considered becoming a dragon on the spot, but it was sure to cause an even more unwelcome stir in the tunnels. You shouldn't wear that kind of face, dear wife, Zushiro chided her. What? Merchants must strive to appear helpful and welcoming to the public, he explained. This is what, lad? No, what did you call me? The Quagga merchant turned his gaze away in embarrassment. You said I could choose, Zushiro said sheepishly. I think it sounds nice. You're going to make things worse. Is it truly so bad? It won't work. But you are very beautiful. 4. Ilishnish threw her paws up into the air. I swear if we weren't in the Sorceress Kingdom, I would have eaten you already. One of the Quagga nearby made a lascivious growling noise. Ilishnish could only shake her head. These mortals were hopeless. Another wagon of assorted rocks trundled down towards them. The owner was a greenish-grey troll that smelled like he had rolled through 20 kilometers of rancid mire. This meant, of course, that he had washed thoroughly before entering the city. Zushiro's apprentices got to work unloading the wagon. His operation was actually quite simple. People would come in with random loads of stone and Zushiro's apprentices would sort the cargo out. There was a service fee for their skills and labor, and Zushiro would negotiate a price for everything. Wait, Ilishnish sensed something pass in front of her. An apprentice, who was holding a handful of wet sand and gravel, stopped. There's something in there, Ilishnish told him. There is? He walked over to place the ball of wet gravel onto a cloth. 2 other apprentices gathered with him and they sifted around for a few seconds. Murmurs of astonishment rose into the air. You. One of the apprentices turned on the first. Is your nose broken? My nose is runny. The accused sniffed. Then go find a druid to heal you. But it costs money. Fool. How can you make money if your nose doesn't work? How much of this have you thrown into the wrong pile? The apprentice held out her paw, revealing several metallic yellow flecks. Master, come see. Zushiro quickly waddled over, and his expression brightened at the sight. Oh, you have found gold, Mr. Troll. What great fortune. The 3-meter-tall troll dropped to his hands and knees to examine the findings. How? Did he understand what he was looking at? Going by the gleam in his eyes, he did. Ilishnish rolled her own, a troll merchant. What was the world coming to? After Zushiro brought her close to their business, which the troll somehow had no problem understanding, she watched the lumbering demi-human head off with a skip in his step. What does he even do with it? Ilishnish muttered. With what? Zushiro asked. The money, Ilishnish answered. As far as I know, those trolls only value food. They purchase tools and other useful items at first, Zushiro told her. The wagon is also bought, but they are going cheaply with House Wagner's new models coming out. Aside from that, they invest their earnings. I invest? What's that? You do not know? Ilishnish glared at him. How strange, Zushiro cleared his throat. The postal offices have a banking network now, so I thought you would be aware. Now I'm even more lost. Speak with normal words. Zushiro put away his coin purse and wiped his hands. It is an institution, no, a place, service? I know what an institution is. It can be dangerous and inconvenient to hold money, so they are encouraging the citizens to deposit it with the postal bank. Won't they need to take it out again if they want to buy something? I thought you said it's more convenient. It is. Every member of the postal bank is issued identification and records, and they may make purchases with them. There is no need to hold money anymore. But I like holding money, Ilishnish pouted. Don't tell me they're forcing everyone to do this. Force? Zushiro frowned back at her. Why would they need to do this? It is clearly better than what has come before. Except she wouldn't be able to sleep on her hoard, or bask in its healing aura, or eat people who came to steal from it and add their treasures to her own. Well, whatever, Ilishnish waved a hand. You said something that sounded like investing. Ah yes, this is the benefit. The postal service takes the deposits and uses them for profitable ventures, mostly improving the transportation network. For keeping their money with the postal bank, members receive a small amount of interest. For every year they keep 100 coins in the bank, they earn 2. That's not much. I can earn more than that in an hour at the Frosty Beard. But it is. Zushiro exclaimed, it is profit that requires no work. You can work while your money also works. The people here, if they invest enough, they can afford to pay for everything they need through this interest alone. But why do that when they can just make more money? A dragon cannot understand this. Zushiro shook his head, for with your age, comes strength. Most grow frail and things are not so easy as when they were young. Instead of working until they die, they can retire to enjoy their lives or pursue their own paths. Age aside, Ilishnish considered the scheme. It did truly feel like a scheme. Where did they get all the money to pay people every year? Her father's entire hoard would have vanished in 1 or 2 payments to so many investors. She had just received 500 platinum trade coins. If she left it with the postal bank, how much would she have in 10,000 years? Something wasn't right. They continued working until the grey of the approaching dawn peeked over the city wall. While it was filled with simple tasks that naturally suited her, she wondered what it had to do with the Empire. Her thoughts turned to the dismal display of the previous evening. Zushiro. Yes? I'm going to improve your merchant stand. You would do this for me? Zushiro blinked several times. Perhaps you should become my wife, after all. I'm not doing it for you, Ilishnish said. I'm doing it for me. Working such a drab stand is annoying. I do not think some improvements would hurt. The stand will not make loud noises or move around on its own, will it? Lady Wagner has been doing crazy things recently, and I have nightmares about her terrifying contraptions sometimes. Ilishnish didn't want to know. She had too much to think about already. Parting ways with the Quagoa merchant, Ilishnish left Erantle at daybreak. She idly ascended, going down a list of improvements she could make. He wanted a tent. The lighting was bad. Did he need a new table? No, she could just cover it with some good cloth. What else would work? A half-hour later, she arrived at the harbor of Warden's Vale. She strolled along the growing row of warehouses in her snow elf appearance until she came across someone she thought might be able to help. Jeeves. Good morning, Dame Verilyn. The diminutive skeleton merchant swept into an elegant bow. How may I assist you? I'd like your opinion on something, she said. Wait, why are you wandering around outside? I'm the warehouse manager, so I must inspect the warehouses, no? Lady Zaradnik dislikes when I leave the safety of my office, but these 2 fine gentlemen will have no problems taking care of me. Jeeves motioned towards the 2 Death Knights to either side of him. Lady Zaradnik was inexplicably paranoid when it came to Jeeves' safety, and Ilishnish wasn't sure why. Is Lady Zaradnik in, by the way? She is not, Jeeves shook his head. I believe she's been in Corlin County for the past few days. Now, what would you like to ask? I'm making improvements to a merchant stand in Erantle, Ilishnish explained, and I'm seeking the opinions of experienced merchants. I see. Well, let's hear it. Jeeves took on a thoughtful pose as Ilishnish described the state of Zushiru's stand and the modifications she proposed. I believe you have the right of it, he said. Cosmetic purchases are always a surefire way to draw the attention of the masses. We have everything that you require here as well. You may want to elicit a second and third opinion, however. The locals have some unexpected tastes. The skeleton merchant pointed towards the end of the row of warehouses. There should be a soul eater over there that will get you to where you need to go. Do you require assistance with anything else? No, thank you. Have a good morning, Jeeves. The wagon took 10 minutes to make its way from the harbor to the plaza. A rate Ilishnish felt dreadfully slow. When the city expanded to fill the island, would she be stuck having to use them? Why not have places where people could land, should they prefer flight? Aromas of bread, fish and herbs wafted over the air as they closed on the new settlement. Ilishnish hopped off of the wagon and joined the flow of villagers, heading straight to a shop that she had noticed the previous day. The plaza had more people out and about performing their morning routines, and many lowered their heads respectfully as she walked by. Chimes sounded lightly in the air as she entered a store that stood out the most to her treasure sense. It wasn't what one would call well-stocked, but it had a variety of magic items for everyday life arrayed on its shelves. Welcome, the man at the counter rose from his stool with a smile. Oh, Dame Verilyn, it is an honor to have you grace our humble shop with your presence. Elishnish smiled and nodded in return. The residents of Warden's Vale carried themselves differently from the citizens of Eranthal. Even the proprietor of a food stand acted like they were running the best food stand in the world. She was certain that this was due to Lady Zaradnik's influence, a rigid hierarchy that was intrinsically known by all provided societal order. Everyone appeared to understand where they fit in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't exactly based on a system of ranks, it was more that it revolved around vocation and expertise. Even Lady Zaradnik would defer to the words of a farmer should the topic of discussion be something that they presumably knew more about. There was a high degree of pride in one's vocation, and the people conducted themselves accordingly. The undead had also been co-opted into this social structure, and they appeared to have no problems fitting right in. "Do you have any magical lighting in stock?" Elishnish asked. "I need 2 to 4. 2 to 4. The clerk tapped his chin. "Will that be a problem?" Most likely not. It's just that prices have gone up in the past week." "Why?" "The usual reasons." The clerk offered an apologetic look. "Interest in our products remains healthy, but material components for popular enchantments are becoming increasingly scarce. The local ateliers have seemingly sucked the region dry of ruby dust." "A coincidence?" "Probably not." "And the quality of the rubies doesn't matter?" "Why yes," the clerk nodded, "they're being ground into powder, after all." "How did you know?" "I just happened to hear something about it in the city," Elishnish replied. "How are the ateliers getting their hands on rubies right now?" "Through agents from Eranthal's Merchant Guild. We don't have any traveling merchants of our own yet, so we're dependent upon them. I dread to know what their margins are." Elishnish wondered how much these agents were making, as well. It seemed like a low-effort venture. They would buy low-quality rubies from unassuming vendors like Zusharu, then immediately turn around and ship them out for a profit. The clerk set 4 crystal globes enchanted with continual light spells into a padded wooden case, and Elishnish went on her way. Cloth in Warden's Vale was created from the vast fields of marsh plants, so it was readily available. She found a large tent at a supply shop, then ended up purchasing a small table. Then she bought a chair. Then a cushion for the chair. Zusharu complained that it was cold on the surface, so she bought a blanket as well. Then a sweater. Before long, she was back in the magic item shop. "Dame Verilyn," the clerk rose with a tentative expression. "Is something the matter? Are there magic items that produce heat?" "That seems to be the big question these days," the clerk smirked. "The people that came here early in the spring spoke of how cold it was when they arrived, so now everyone's trying to find ways to stay warm. Humans usually burn firewood, do they not?" "Usually. After experiencing firsthand how much our other items save them in the long run, though, they want magical heating. Lady Zaradnik supports the idea, too. I suppose as a ranger she doesn't like harvesting trees solely for the purpose of burning if it can be helped. It will leave soot everywhere when we grow larger, too, and no one wants that. Less burning was always good. Though she possessed a greater ring of fire resistance, she still often instinctively reacted to a frost dragon's bane. "I hear that the new alchemist has an idea of what to do," the clerk told her. "She's working with Kovalev to figure out how to best configure the product. I'm no enchanter, but I would guess they're aiming to get the new magic item out before winter." Which meant that a cozy space for Zusharu would have to wait. Disappointed, Elishnish left the shop. They would just have to make do. On the way back to Eranthal, she stopped by one of the lizardman villages and bought 10 fish. Elishnish hummed to herself idly as she munched on her breakfast. Zusharu had better appreciate her efforts.